Blue Jays fans have reached a breaking point, and honestly, it is difficult to argue with them. Following yet another deflating loss, this team is struggling across every dimension of the game: pitching, hitting, and most visibly, defense. The errors are piling up, the injuries are piling up, and the frustration from a fan base that showed up to this season with genuine optimism is reaching levels that are hard to ignore. At Blue Jays Focus, we have a great deal to unpack today because this situation demands a thorough and honest conversation about where this team stands and how things got here so quickly. There are two storylines in particular that are consuming the fan base right now, and both deserve more attention than they are currently receiving. The first is the injury to Daulton Varsho, who was forced to leave the most recent game due to left knee discomfort. The second, and the one that perhaps is not getting enough coverage, is a hand injury suffered by Vladimir Guerrero Jr. during that same game, when your two most visible players are both dealing with physical ailments on the same night, and your team is already stretched thin across the roster. The situation takes on a weight that is genuinely alarming. Let us begin with the Daulton Varsho situation, because the circumstances surrounding it are troubling on multiple levels. Varsho was removed from the lineup mid-game with what was described as discomfort in the area running from his quad down to his knee. Manager John Schneider addressed the injury after the game, confirming that no MRI was planned immediately and that the team was treating it as a day-to-day matter. Schneider also acknowledged that Varsho had actually felt the discomfort before the game began and informed his manager prior to first pitch. That detail raises a legitimate question. Why was he in the lineup at all? This is not a criticism of Varsho, who clearly wanted to be out there and compete. But this team is already operating well below full strength, and the risk of turning a manageable injury into something far more serious by rushing a player through it is a genuine concern. What started as day-to-day discomfort has the potential to become a prolonged absence if it is not managed with care, and given how the injury bug has bitten this roster in 2026, there is very little margin for error. On the same night, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. suffered an injury to his left index finger when a base runner clipped his glove hand on a play at first base. The training staff and Schneider came out to check on him, and Guerrero indicated afterward that he was fine. Schneider echoed that sentiment after the game, saying Vladdy caught his finger in the runner's jersey but told his manager not to worry. The hope is that he will be ready to go and that this amounts to nothing more than a scare. But in the context of everything else happening with this roster, even a minor scare carries outsized significance. This is the franchise cornerstone. If Guerrero misses any meaningful time, the offensive ceiling of this lineup drops dramatically, particularly given how many other pieces are already absent. And that brings us to the broader issue that is quietly becoming the defining story of this young Toronto season: the defense. It has been sloppy. Not occasionally sloppy, consistently momentum-killing sloppy. The kind of defensive lapses that do not just give up runs, but strangle offensive rallies before they can breathe. In the most recent loss, Eric Lauer actually gave the Blue Jays a respectable start. 5 innings, 3 runs allowed, the kind of outing that, under normal circumstances, gives a team a fighting chance. And yet it was not enough, because the plays that needed to be made behind him were not made. Guerrero himself committed an error at first base, which is somewhat unusual for a player who has genuinely improved his defense at that position. He made an excellent play earlier in that same game on a sharply hit ball, but one lapse, in a game where every run matters and every out counts, can be the difference between winning and losing when your offense is producing at the level this one currently is. It is worth paraphrasing a sentiment that made the rounds on social media and seemed to capture the collective mood perfectly. This team cannot hit, makes sloppy defensive plays, has only 2 dependable starters, and is running its bullpen ragged. That summary is blunt, but it is not inaccurate. The rotation depth has been decimated, which means the bullpen is being asked to carry innings it was never designed to carry. When you are leaning on relievers in high-leverage situations on a nightly basis because you do not have starters capable of eating innings, those arms wear down quickly. And when your defense fails to convert outs that would otherwise shorten those same innings, the entire system collapses under its own weight. Kazuma Okamoto has been a black hole offensively. Ernie Clement has not been making hard contact consistently. Travis Heineman has been serviceable, but not a difference maker. Spencer Horwitz has had his moments, but not nearly enough of them. Even the depth pieces who were supposed to provide stability when injuries hit, the very group that was celebrated as one of this organization's greatest strengths entering the season, have not delivered. Nathan Lukes snapped a cold streak of more than 20 consecutive hitless at-bats with a single in the most recent game, which is a milestone that speaks more to how difficult things have been than to any kind of momentum. The production simply has not been there from the bottom of the order, and it is making every game an uphill climb. Andres Jimenez has been one of the few consistent bright spots. Miles Straw played an outstanding game and deserves recognition for stepping up in the absence of others. Guerrero has been solid in stretches, going 1 for 4 in the most recent contest, though his power numbers have not reached the level that fans expect from him over a full season. But isolated performances from individuals cannot compensate for a lineup that is missing George Springer, Addison Barger, Alejandro Kirk, and now potentially Daulton Varsho. When you subtract that much production from any roster in baseball, the results are going to suffer. But this team has not been playing with the focus and cleanliness that difficult circumstances demand. A look at the team's offensive numbers relative to last season tells the full story. The Blue Jays ranked 11th in OPS and 11th in WRC+ at this point a year ago. Home run production was in the middle of the pack. This season, virtually every offensive metric has cratered. Some of that is directly attributable to the injuries. It would be dishonest to pretend otherwise, but some of it is also the product of poor at-bat quality, an inability to put together consistent multi-hit innings, and an approach that has not adjusted to the challenges the team is facing. Playing small ball has produced some runs. There were back-to-back bunt singles that drove in the team's only run across 2 separate games. But manufacturing runs through bunts is not a sustainable offensive strategy for a team built to compete at the highest level of the American League East. Now, to the rotation situation, because it is more dire than the casual fan may realize. Cody Ponce underwent ACL surgery on Friday, and the Blue Jays have confirmed that they expect him to be ready for 2027 spring training. He is, for all practical purposes, done for this season. There is reportedly a 1% chance he returns before the year is out, which is effectively zero. This is an absolutely devastating development. Ponce was projected to be a workhorse for this rotation, a starter capable of eating close to 200 innings and providing the kind of reliable depth that allows a team to manage its other arms carefully. Losing that many innings and that kind of dependability from a rotation that was already thin behind Kevin Gausman and Dylan Cease has forced the organization into an impossible situation. Eric Lauer is being asked to do more than he probably should. Joe Mantiply and other relievers are being stretched into leverage roles they were not built to absorb. The math simply does not work. Trey Yesavage is progressing through his rehab assignment and continues to work his way back. That is a positive development, even if it does not solve the immediate problem. José Berríos remains in the injury conversation as well, with updates expected in the coming days. Every piece of rotation help matters right now, because the current situation is unsustainable. On the injury front, more broadly, George Springer's toe is reportedly improving, and he has been taking batting practice in the cages consistently. He has not yet begun running, which limits the timeline on his return, but the expectation is that he could be back relatively soon given that he is on the 10-day injured list. Addison Barger, dealing with a double ankle injury, has progressed to taking ground balls hit directly at him and has resumed throwing. He is expected to begin running sometime next week, which puts his return window further out than Springer's. What was initially framed as a relatively minor injury has now extended to weeks of absence, which has been a significant blow to both the lineup and the infield depth. Alejandro Kirk's absence continues to be felt as well. There is an argument that he is the most valuable player on this roster from a pure production and positional scarcity standpoint, and he has been out for a meaningful stretch of games. Sitting at 7 wins and 12 losses is not where anyone envisioned this team being in the early weeks of the season. The American League East as a whole has not gone on the kind of historic early tear that the division has produced in recent years, which provides a small measure of comfort. There is still time. The deficit is not insurmountable, but the path back to relevance runs directly through solving the problems that no amount of excuses can fully explain away. The defensive lapses, the passive at-bats, the reliance on a bullpen being asked to do far too much. With a fully healthy lineup, Springer, Barger, Kirk, Varsho, and the rest, this is a different team. That is not wishful thinking. It is just true. But healthy teams are not built by waiting around for injured players to return. They are built by the players on the field competing with clarity and purpose, regardless of circumstance. The Blue Jays have not done that consistently enough in 2026, and that is the honest assessment. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. needs to be monitored carefully, and the hope is that his finger checks out clean and he is back in the lineup without issue. If Varsho's knee holds up as well as the early reports suggest it might, and if Springer is able to begin running this weekend as expected, the roster picture could start to look slightly brighter in the near term. Miles Straw has been outstanding and deserves enormous credit for what he has brought in a fill-in role. He cannot carry this team alone, but his performance has been one of the few genuine highlights of a difficult stretch. Blue Jays focus will keep a close eye on every injury update and roster development as this week progresses. The situation is genuinely difficult right now, and this channel is not going to pretend otherwise, but this is still a talented group, and a fully healthy Blue Jays lineup is a dangerous Blue Jays lineup. The work between now and that point, however, has to be better. Cleaner baseball, fewer unforced errors, better at-bats with runners in scoring position. That is what a turnaround looks like, and it starts in the next game. Thank you all for watching Blue Jays Focus.
Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.